Welcome everybody to this scrutiny panel for Rugby Borough Council. We are short of a few people, but hopefully they'll either join us a little later or will give their apologies. That's for Councillor Barker and Councillor Edwards. Councillor Hassel, I have explained she may be here later. Okay, if we go to the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of January 2025. When it was 27th of January. Yeah, we had two, didn't we? Sorry. 27th, the minutes of the... Is everybody happy that those are approved?
Might follow up on actions, but yes, I'm happy to approve.
Yeah, okay. Any follow-up on actions?
Well, there were two actions that were limited. If we go to local plan first, have we got a date when the local plan is coming back to us as a council's group? Is the question.
Do you want to?
Sorry. Thank you, Chairman. If I may, through you, all councillors have received an invitation to attend a briefing on the local plan, which is 6 p.m. on Tuesday the 25th. That's for councillors, not members of the public, in case anyone is watching. And beyond that, obviously there'll be opportunities for scrutiny if they wish to look at things, but that's a briefing for all members before it heads off towards council, I believe.
Just wanted that on.
Yeah, I think the question we did ask was that there was a briefing for members because it wasn't actually in the diary at all. And I know that for me personally, what came out in the local plan on to Cabinet was quite a surprise. In fact, it was a shock because we'd had no prior notice of any of it. Not even when we were discussing it at scrutiny. So, yeah. We have got the briefing, that's fine.
The second action was around potentially illegal activity going on in the town centre.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to say, we have written to Warwickshire Police and we had received a response from Detective Chief Inspector Charlie Norton. They have confirmed that money laundering and economic crime is a national priority area and that there is work within Warwickshire ongoing in regard to economic crime, kind of as you would largely expect. That said, given the national priority and the national work which is ongoing and the need for operational security, they haven't provided us with further detail at the moment. However, what we will do is keep monitoring that with them and hopefully we should get more information in due course. But as I'm sure members can appreciate, the police have a need to protect operational work because they don't want to tip off people to specifics of what they're doing if that is the case. But we will continue to monitor with our colleagues in the constabulary, and where we can provide more information to members, we will do.
Thank you for that response. I think that's the only response that could be given. We also have crime coming back again to scrutiny later in the year. I think if we could have this as a follow-up question, so that at least it comes back to scrutiny again.
Yeah, happy with that. We have our normal annual report that comes through from covering crime and disorder, so that'll be fine. If next on the agenda is declarations of interest, which seems a bit strange that it's at that end. When I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, oh, we've just approved the minutes. And, okay. Declarations of interest. Non-pecuniary interests. pecuniary interests, or notice non-payment of community charge or council tax. I hope there's nobody of that. Okay, so we'll move on then. Sorry.
Sorry, Chair, could I just add an apology from Councillor Ramesh Srivastava to the ones you mentioned earlier?
Right, if we move on then to the customer journey interim update. Thomas, do you want to cover this?
Okay, there we go. Thank you. Just wanted to really just run through the kind of an interim update on where we are as a council in terms of our work to improve the customer journey. It's obviously a continued piece of work for us and a key kind of avenue of improvement in terms of engaging with residents across the Borough of Rugby. And obviously it's a highlighted issue that residents raise over and over again in terms of the difficulties they have in terms of engaging and getting through to the officers they wish to speak to on a lot of different topics in which they reach us for. So, as you know, I manage the customer service centre amongst other things at the council, so I'm going to run through some recent improvements that we've made which are hopefully improving the lives of residents and making that customer journey easier for them. The direct debit digitalisation project, which came to Cabinet and Council towards the end of last year, has been live since mid-January. We've seen almost 4,000 households across Rugby Borough register and set up an account through that system, which means they can manage their council tax payments. They can set up new council tax informers they've left the borough and close their accounts. They can change their payment dates, some of their information, amongst a lot of other self-service options. This will hopefully reduce the call volume into the customer service centre and allow the staff that we have to better deal with the vulnerable residents who actually need to contact us on the phone, as opposed to residents who are just coming in to talk about council tax. And just for a bit of background on that, the main reason why we targeted council tax as an area of interest for us is that approximately 80% of the calls we get into the council are regarding council tax, and the vast majority of them occur between March and May in that kind of annual billing period. So the whole point of the project was twofold. One was to reduce the peak demand between March and May to mean that we can actually deal with the calls more effectively, and longer term it was to reduce the proportion of calls which are related to council tax. So we get approximately 16,000 council tax calls within the next 3 months, which is a significant number for the team to deal with. The other benefit of the direct debit digitalisation project is that it reduces the manual processing done by both the customer service centre and the finance and revenue teams. So really it reduces the manual workload for two whole departments at the council with one system. So there's a lot of benefits for us doing that. And it will improve the speed, access and standard of customer service at RBC, both now and into the future, as this is a compounding thing year on year. The more people we sign up every year, the less demand there is on the customer service centre moving forward. And just to go on to our future plan changes, we are currently in the final stages of working on the revised communications and engagement strategy with the communications team. We are currently working with our portfolio holder to kind of go through the final stages and the kind of look and feel of that, ready for it to be shared wider at the council, to really talk about our renewed approach for consultation with residents, businesses and communities. The strategy document will include a pledge to increase resident and community involvement in decision making at the council and any associated activities which may have an impact on their day-to-day lives. In addition to the strategy on an internal point of view, we are producing a short guide for officers and also elected members on practical ways in which they can apply the new strategy when engaging with communities, residents, businesses and the wider borough, as that was identified as a gap previously. Having the strategy is all well and good, but having an actual guide on how to apply it in your day-to-day job is a lot more useful for staff and officers. And as promised previously, the strategy will be presented to Scrutiny in its full form once finalised by the communications team. So, thank you.
Cool. Probably 3 questions. The first one is an interim report, and I understand that, but I would probably want to see some KPIs coming through this and the KPIs being talked to. So my question to you is more the general one is, how do you measure the customer journey? And how do you measure the customer experience in that? So that's my first question.
So in terms of measuring the customer journey, really what we would, I guess it's a twofold answer. If you want to measure the kind of throughput of the customer service centre and the efficiency of the customer service centre, you would have metrics such as average wait time, average call, number of calls in the queue, average calls which are dropped because they haven't been answered quick enough and people have hung up the phone. So you have these standard metrics like that, which are all well and good, but they don't really tell the full journey. What we're really working for with a lot of our future plans, which I will talk about in more detail in the full report when it comes to scrutiny in the future, is that we're looking to ensure that when a request comes into the council, into the customer service centre, it isn't just passed on and then lost. It's brought in, it's transferred to another team, and that accountability is transferred. That need to have a timeline, some kind of an update is transferred across the council. So with that, we'll be able to provide KPIs such as average time to reply to a resident after it's been transferred to a team. And we can then compare different departments, different teams, and say really where the pain points are. Because there's likely to be some teams, due to the nature of their work and the fact that they're not in the town hall, maybe out in the community doing things, where it is slower to respond to residents. And there may be good reasons for that, but we don't know until we start to measure and track those things. So in terms of the KPIs, they will come out in the future as we start to improve some of our solutions to track the actual queries and complaints and questions through the council from beginning to end.
Thank you, Thomas, for the answer. Yeah, we're eager to see this, whatever it is, the ticketing system come through. So please, the sooner you can provide, the better, I think, because as you described, I don't think we can measure the customer journey till you have that full set of figures. That was my first question. The second one really was, you mentioned the communications and engagement strategy coming, but when? So when is that coming through?
So my plan is to actually have it done by the end of this week. It will then need to go back around and go through to the portfolio holder and have some final checks, but the actual finalised version should be done by the end of this week, start of next week. So we're talking single figure weeks until I can share a finalised draft.
We have another meeting in April. I think that's right, isn't it, Lynn? So that would be appropriate then, at that time. Yeah? Yeah.
Assuming it's not April the 12th, this is my birthday and I won't be here, yes.
We'll make sure of that.
Oh, sorry. Okay, my last one was really more about strategy. I do note the portfolio holder isn't here, and I haven't heard an apology, so maybe there is one. I think when we talked previously, there was other items within your realm. I think there was a customer charter in there and other things. Could you just expand maybe on what the other materials or policies you might be bringing forward?
Sure. Thank you for the question. In terms of the customer charter, and again, as you've mentioned, I'll have to confirm with the portfolio holder, but it is my understanding that the amalgamated strategy and pledge will include the customer charter. It will be rolled up into a single document which covers a more cohesive overview of engagement. The customer charter on its own, as a single standalone document, in my opinion, didn't cover a wide enough spread to be really, a useful tool. So it's now going to be part of a wider pledge to engage with not just residents but businesses and community groups and parish and town councils.
Chair. Thank you for that report. It's very interesting and it definitely seems a way forward, so that's a really positive move. Moving forward further, when we eventually become a unitary, how will this programme transition towards the county council? Is it something that will merge easily, or will it be complicated when it comes to transition into that one unitary?
Thank you for that question. It's quite an interesting topic, actually. In terms of the technological underpinnings for, say, the case management or the tracking that we just spoke about, I have regular meetings set up with my counterparts at County Council and other teams at County Council where we're actively actually having these discussions around what their plans are, what our plans are, making sure that we're at least on the same page, not necessarily doing the same thing, but we're doing things in a way which would mean that if they are combined in the future, they are easier and they're at least a compatible approach. So that is something that I am taking into account on a more kind of longer scale, but yeah, that is something that I'm actively engaging with.
We discussed how we're going to measure that, and that's fair enough. But what about in terms of customer care and communications? I think that's really, really important, because how we communicate and how we train perhaps our staff to do that, I think is really the key to everything. It can also help to alleviate any conflict or anything along those lines. So I just wanted to know how we're going to be handling that.
Thank you for that question. I guess as a team, we're tackling that on multiple fronts. From the customer service centre point of view, which is the large majority of customer engagements, is through either the phones, emails, or the actual individuals sat at their reception desk downstairs, who are also part of the customer service centre team. So in terms of that, we are exploring opportunities for them to have de-escalation and conflict management training. It is an unidentified issue which we have faced in the reception area, but obviously not everyone that we encounter is going to be aggressive in nature. Obviously you have vulnerable residents who really do require an extra level of care, and we're combating that on two fronts. Firstly, in the medium term, as the strain is taken off the customer service centre through things like council tax, green bins and other things which are a significant use of our time and resources, it will allow us to have members of staff that are dedicated to dealing with vulnerable residents, who can sit down and have the time. If the call takes 20 minutes, the call takes 45 minutes, that's fine. We can deal with that. And I think that is something we should explore, because there's always going to be residents who live within Rugby Borough who find the phone is the only real way in which they can engage with the council, or vice versa, coming in and talking to somebody in person. And we need to always make sure we have the capacity to do that. And if we remove some of the manual work associated with the kind of peak demand, we can hopefully satisfy that. And moving forwards, we're also looking into ways in which we can better serve the residents in terms of the documentation and council paperwork that we have. So we're looking into ways in which we can take some of our complex, very word-heavy, technical jargon papers that we have, and cabinet and council papers are a prime example of that, and make it in an accessible format, not just for people who have vision or other reading needs. You can also have instances where you can lower the reading age so that it's more accessible, because a lot of the language that's used is very complex, and the average reading age in the UK is somewhere between 13 and 14 years old. So it doesn't make sense if you want to increase our democratic outreach if we have some quite complex cabinet papers which are inaccessible to a large chunk of the population. So we are making sure that if we chip away at this problem from a lot of different angles, we can hopefully, you know, make a real positive impact for our residents.
I think that sounds all good. I was just going to say that in terms of empathy, in terms of different sorts of vulnerabilities, especially single mothers. I had a case recently where a single mother was going to be evicted within 30 days from a home, and I've got to say the council did handle it very well. But I think that in terms of customer care, I think that's something that could be worked on and improved. So I just thought I'd point that out.
Thank you. If you do have any further comments, I would love to reach out and we can have a chat and meet with the customer service centre team if you wanted to talk about it further.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Hi. I read this with interest, and I'm afraid I have to let loose my inner accountant. What sort of resources are going to be required to bring about these improvements? Is this a spend to save initiative?
In terms of the direct debit digitisation?
Well, are you, for example, investing in new technology?
Yes, we are.
Could you give us an idea of what's going on? Yes, please.
So the tool which we're planning to use for the kind of case management tracking is something that we are already using within my directorate to manage our own caseload for our own work. So it's a tool that we already utilise and or pay for. So it's an extension of what we found worked for us on an internal basis. We looked out and looked for use cases in which we could use it elsewhere in the council. This is one of those opportunities we've identified. So the actual cost is fairly minimal. You're talking just paying for the managed service hours to transfer some of the data across. It's going to be a couple of £1,000. It's not going to be a significant investment, and actually we're covering that out of our existing budgets anyway. So as different use cases come along within the council, we have made an offer to other teams and say, look, we will, share this with you. All you've got to do is cover the initial managed service, and then we can see where we can go. And actually, it's a model that seems to be working quite well.
This is way above my pay grade, but I've heard the words artificial intelligence being employed in connection with digital communication. Can you perhaps give us an indication of how that's being deployed around this strategy?
I would love to do that. As you may or may not know, I have a PhD in AI, so it's something I will always talk about whenever I get an opportunity to. So yes, we are exploring on a more longer term basis, because obviously it requires some significant investment. We can't just do it on the fly. We are exploring ways to utilise artificial intelligence to, it's called segmenting and reflecting of our calls. So in practice, what that means is there's certain things you can ring up for that don't require a human interaction. In the past, for example, some people have rang up and said, what day is my black bin being picked up? If you can give us your postcode, we can tell you without actually having a person to do it. We have an automated service. That is well within the realms of what we could achieve. I know it's a fairly simplistic example, but you'd be shocked how many people ring up asking what their bin day is. So even if it's 50 calls a week, that's going to be an hour of save time across the customer service centre. And obviously that's just the most simplest example. Once you get a lot more complex examples, you can really, what we're striving to get is a call where you ring up, you share some information, you go through some automated process where you kind of go down different routes and answer different things, and then you go through to a person. Because you're always going to need a person really to validate the more complex queries, but they haven't got to be there for the whole phone call. If you spend the first 2 minutes going through some options where you don't press a button, you just talk into the phone and say, I'd like to ring up about my mother who is in receipt of housing benefit and she received a letter in the post. That would be fine, great. And you can go through some options. You can say, what date did the letter come in? What was the reference number on that? you know, what's your mother's name, where does she live. You can do all of that and then go through to a person who can then deal with it better for you. So it's about better using our resources with technology, not replacing resources with technology.
Councillors, have we all asked all our questions? Sorry, Councillor New.
Sorry, just a very quick one. You mentioned that 4,000 households have signed up to this account. What about the existing people with existing direct debits? Are they automatically transferred and you can automatically access your account online now?
Yes, so this is a platform by which you can access the existing direct debit information you have or set up a new one. So everyone who has a direct debit currently set up at the council has been sent an email with instructions on how to log in and create an account for the first time, or at least that's happening over the next 10 days or so. It goes in a tranche basis because we can't send out 50,000 emails in one go. Yes. Yeah.
Right, we have in the past proposed having a working group with regard to the customer journey, and I would like to see this set up. I think we've got some really good topics here: KPIs, resources, customer care, and all of that, looking at it from the point of view of if a unitary council for Warwickshire comes along as well. So I think there's quite a lot for members to go at in that. I'd like to get that set up as soon as possible, please. Yeah, and I can see there'll be some volunteers because I've got some nods. Okay, thank you. So if we move on to the next, Thomas, thank you very much for that presentation. It was really very useful. I think you can understand that members are interested very much in this topic. It's right at the heart of what we do as a council for residents. So, yeah, I think the working group will help and support what you're trying to achieve throughout the council. I understand that you've been here all day, so if you would like to leave, having done your item, then you are very welcome to do so.
Thank you.
Well, sorry.
Sorry, Chair. Just to quickly clarify, the working group that you were envisaging, presumably that's a working group out of the Scrutiny Committee. Was that time-bound, or do you want to set it up and just have it sort of running alongside Scrutiny while it's active?
I don't think we would restrict it to Scrutiny, but obviously we would not, we'd prefer it to be people who are not sitting on cabinet, for example.
It would need to be.
It would need to be. I do envisage it being open to other councillors who wish to take part, not just Scrutiny councillors, because we're quite limited on Scrutiny numbers. But I certainly think that it probably should run for a year. That would make sense from my point of view, because you've got a new strategy coming in, you've got things that are happening with. If we set it up with the terms of reference around that, I think in the first instance that would be useful.
Okay, we can certainly work with that, but thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, no problem. There was a second item on that, just to clarify, moving off the agenda a little bit, but we also wanted to survey all the members to ensure that scrutiny items, they were included. So whatever we will, we can choose obviously to look at things, but we would like to survey members and just check that we are actually doing what they want us to do.
So thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, we do actually have some work in progress, and that would be to help members develop their work plan for effectively the coming municipal year, stroke the very latter stages of this one.
Yeah.
to clarify, that is the scrutiny work plan that we're looking to ask members. So the survey will go out to all members to say, what topics do you think scrutiny ought to be giving consideration to, looking at and doing, over and above what might be the work plan or the council's formal forward plan that would be through cabinet, council, etc. And then members of this committee can look at the response to that and decide, well, from that we're going to pick these topics, these issues, and have your own work programme for the coming municipal year.
It was in the minutes so that we move it forward.
No problem.
Okay, over to you, Dan. And item 5.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening all. I'd just like to start with a couple of apologies. So, first of all, Judith Hicks, our HR manager, would usually be here to talk to this item, but unfortunately Judith's off ill this week. And secondly, Councillor Maggie O'Rourke, the portfolio holder, again, I spoke to her earlier today. She would have liked to have been here, but she had a pre-arranged personal commitment this evening, which meant that she's unable to attend. But there is an absolute commitment from both Judith and Councillor O'Rourke to work with this scrutiny committee in the development of the People's Strategy. So there is the report which Judith's provided, which gives an overview of where we are. But I thought I'd try and just add a little bit of additional context to that. So first of all, why a people strategy? Why is it important? Well, it's about how we recruit and retain our staff. It's about how we support and develop them, but also Councillor Sayani, I think it was, the question on the last section about customer care. You know, our corporate values, the first one is customers first. So it's about how do we actually give life to those values. You know, without thinking about these things, there's a risk that they just become a catchphrase and not things that we live by. And to me, the people strategy should be one of the means by which we support our staff and encourage them to really live by those values on a day-to-day basis. It has been a long process to develop a people strategy. It actually started a couple of years back, and my first exposure to it really was through the Corporate Peer Challenge in October 2023, and through that process it became really clear that we needed a robust strategy to inform this work. There have, of course, been numerous changes since then, so a new corporate strategy that we've adopted, and I think it's only right that the people strategy reflects how we empower and support our staff to deliver that corporate strategy. We also undertook a really comprehensive employee engagement survey towards the end of last year. These are things that we've done for many years, but actually last year we took the approach of engaging an external specialist to support us with that, and have to say the results were excellent. The results were very revealing, but actually the engagement in that survey was excellent. It was 2.5 times the response rate that we've had on previous surveys, so a really robust data set, evidence base for us to actually develop our people strategy from. And then, of course, the most recent change, which I think impacts on this work, is the work around the devolution white paper, potential for local government reorganisation. It actually really changes the context, I think, for our people strategy and how we support and develop our staff through that process. So that's the reason for the delay with it so far. However, a previous draft was produced, and there was a lot of good work within that previous draft. It set out 6 ambitions which we'd seek to achieve through the strategy. So they're attracting and retaining the best people to work for us. So you may be aware from some of the statistics that you receive that actually some of our recruitment and retention has been challenging over recent years. Second ambition was to develop truly effective individual performance management processes. And again, for those of you that are newer to the organisation, it might be something of a surprise that we didn't previously have a PDR, personal development review process, an annual appraisal. And whilst we haven't actually adopted the strategy, that is a piece of work that we've actually implemented already, so we've done that ahead of the strategy. The third ambition was offering high quality and relevant learning and development opportunities to our people, which has been really, really successful, the work that we've done so far. We've introduced a whole raft of new training courses, including some that really are less focused on the specific elements of people's roles, but actually more towards their own professional development. But that's certainly something that we'll take forward through the people strategy. Point 4 is around delivering great leadership development interventions to help shift culture and climate. So again, through some of the statistics that you'll have seen already, we do have challenges around some of our cultural practices. I think it's fair to say that we, along with many other organisations, I don't think we've actually really found our place since COVID and the pandemic working, the shift to hybrid working, remote working. And actually we really need to be doing that now, because that's quite some time ago. So how do we adapt to that new way of working? How do we promote a positive culture and climate for all of our staff to work within? The 5th ambition was around supporting our colleagues to be happy, healthy and here. Again, the statistics that we've shared over the past couple of years have shown that we've had some challenges with absence from work. We know the specific causes of those, and actually we're very good at dealing with them when they arise. So if somebody's unwell, we deal with it in a really good way, in my opinion. What I think we want to see through the people strategy is investing in that well-being for people at work from more of a preventative angle. So actually, how do we stop people becoming unwell if it's stress or musculoskeletal injuries? How can we better prevent people from becoming unwell and actually support them to, as it says, be happy, healthy and here? And then finally, there was one that was really geared towards our staff, which was around creating the conditions in which being the best you can be is noticed, rewarded and celebrated. And I never miss an opportunity to say that we've got some amazing colleagues here at Rugby Borough Council, and some of the work they do on a day-to-day basis is truly incredible. But one of the things that we're not very good at is recognising that and celebrating those facts. So really pleasing to see that in the draft of the people strategy that takes a very high priority. So the strategy in its current form is built around those 6 ambitions, and I think there's an opportunity actually by working with the portfolio holder but also working with his scrutiny committee, we can sense check those ambitions. Are they still the right ones that we want to see moving forwards? For each of those ambitions, the current draft defines some outcomes, so the changes that we want to see, the difference we want to see. It defines some actions, so the things that we'll do to actually deliver the outcomes. And again, relating to the previous item, there are success criteria, struggling with words. So how we will measure success, the key performance indicators that you just spoke about. The key performance indicators are a really interesting one, because we want to stretch, we want to push what we can actually achieve and really be ambitious with those, but we also have to recognise that some of the things that we're measuring, we're actually starting from quite a low starting point. So sickness absence is one that we often bring up, where we are at a low starting point. We're below where we should be in terms of sickness absence. So it's actually quite an incremental process. The KPIs need to be realistic. So year 1, you know, it might not be the end goal of where we want to get to, but it's a step in the right direction. So the way that the draft strategy is structured is that it has 3 years really. So in year 1, we look at the foundations, which is around ensuring compliance, getting our policies right, getting everything up to scratch and resolving some of the legacy issues. And the KPIs that go along with that are perhaps not where you'd want to see them eventually, but they recognise the starting point and they're a realistic progression towards that end point. The second year looks more towards leadership and performance. So this is about really embedding that performance management culture. I spoke before about the personal development reviews, which have now been implemented across the majority of the workforce. We need to just do the final elements of the workforce who haven't had their first PDR yet, but then we really need to embed that way of working where performance conversations become the norm. And I have to say again, we recognise that we're starting from a point where that isn't the case. So actually the measurement of that target is going to be incremental again. But actually it's with that ambition of becoming a performance-driven organisation. And then the final year is about the development and growth year, which really focuses in on ensuring people are valued, rewarded, and offered those opportunities for growth and development. So recognising the potential that we have within so many of our colleagues and actually working with them to support them to be the best they can be. Again, a 3-year action plan like that, I mean, the obvious point that I have to make is that with local government reorganisation on the horizon, that 3-year timescale is challenging. There are challenges within that, and if we look at things like staff morale, there's potential for that to be impacted negatively by local government reorganisation. Personally, I think that there's a lot to be positive about with local government reorganisation, and that by delivering this strategy and empowering our staff and encouraging them to be the best they can be, it actually puts our staff in the best possible position for local government reorganisation, and our services can be the exemplars on which any future council could build their services on themselves. So I think that context of the devolution white paper and local government reorganisation is really one that needs to play through in the draft of this. So I was thinking about Scrutiny Committee, and obviously we had a conversation with Councillor Timms some time ago, and we all agreed actually. So Judith is the HR manager, Councillor O'Rourke as the portfolio holder, and Councillor Timms as the chair of Scrutiny agreed that this is the sort of thing that Scrutiny should be looking at, but looking at from a pre-scrutiny perspective. So how can the Scrutiny Committee contribute towards the development of the strategy? So in a way, I'm apologetic for it, but I'm also really pleased that I'm not here saying this is the strategy, what do you think about it? Because I think the opportunity is there now for us to work together over the next couple of months, engage representatives of Scrutiny in the drafting of that revised strategy, and the timescale for that then going to Cabinet is June 2025, so June of this year. So we've got a couple of months to really draft it before it gets into that committee report cycle. But I guess my ask or offer is that I'd really welcome input from members of this committee, either in the formal meetings or outside of them through little workshops or something to support the drafting of that strategy, because I think by doing that we'll end up with a much stronger strategy at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dan. I think you probably answered all my questions as you talked through. I think Tony will have a question, but I'll leave that question to Tony. Okay, so it's really about now more about the process, I think, is going to be the questions we're saying. We would love to see it, well, we need to see it before June Cabinet. I think most of us would volunteer to want to read through it and try and be an independent, critical friend on it and try and look through it and come back to you with what we're thinking about it. So I think I'm just in support of what you said, Dan, and we would like to, but well, I can personally say I would like to read through it and try and do. My own question is then about making sure that we do it, and I just wondered, therefore it's about the next meeting. And to a level, I think this could be quite we could do an informal meeting beforehand maybe and do this. It might be more effective, more conversation, rather than actually do a formal scrutiny on it. I think we want to be as helpful as we can, and maybe doing that as a separate session would work.
Yeah, I think you're correct, because we've also, there's a delivery plan attached to this as well. So there's a couple of things for scrutiny to look at, and it may be that a session before either the next scrutiny meeting or the one first in the new year would be a good plan. And I'll look to you to tell me what timing is most appropriate. And we would like to involve at some stage the portfolio holder.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And to clarify, the portfolio holder was very keen to engage with scrutiny too. More than happy to bring this back. In fact, I'm happy to come along to the next meeting even with an update. But if there are volunteers from this committee who would like to meet up in the meantime to have, as you say, a less formal discussion, we can get the previous draft out and we can talk about what you agree with, what you think needs to change. Then we can use that to help to inform the strategy, working with Councillor O'Rourke. And apologies, we've also been working with Councillor Dumbleton as well on this, so she's been very engaged on the employee engagement survey. So I think there's a real opportunity for us just to work really proactively to develop a better end product.
I just wanted to say that I think it's important as well, because some of this was thrashed out in the Equality and Diversity Committee, and I think it's really important that we also look at diversity and embrace it. I'm not sure about our workforce, but it's a good idea, I think, culturally to understand. I'm sure we have other residents who we're going to come across, and it's good in all of that. I think also in terms of, I have spoken about this with Dan before, and I think incentivising in some shape or form so that we can reward personnel in the best way that we can. So I think these are really important things. Sometimes we talk about them. We say, oh, we want to reward staff, but actually how do we reward staff that they feel valued? And I think that's where we need to get right to the basics of, you know, Christmas parties, I've mentioned that, whatever it is that we can do better. So that's what I'd like to talk about.
Two excellent points, and two that I wholeheartedly agree with. I mean, we know that the E&D steering group in particular has really moved on in recent times, and I think your point about making sure that I always use the phrase built in, not bolted on. So E&D is built in, not bolted on to this people strategy is absolutely crucial. So thank you for raising that. And the second one about employee reward, I think we've had several, sorry, I haven't, members have had several discussions in this chamber actually about that exact issue. I think it's important that we use the people strategy as an opportunity to kind of explore the art of the possible there. There are numerous councils around us who have different policies for doing that. I think we need to learn from good practice there, bring those suggestions back into the chamber and actually look at what we can do to reward and encourage our staff more, and the positive impact that then has on recruitment and retention, people being happy, healthy in here. You know, that there's a real opportunity there.
To that it will also have an impact on what we were talking about earlier, which was the other strategy. What was that one? The sorry. Customer engagement, that's customer journey. Yes, absolutely, because if we have happy staff, then we're going to have happy engagement with customers. So I think it's all pretty much, it's all in alignment, really.
This people strategy has been in development for quite a long time. I think it was originally predicated on business as usual, but it's no longer business as usual. There's going to be a great deal of change and a great deal of uncertainty amongst the staff. I mean, I don't think it's going to particularly impact on the operative side because bins still have to be collected, roads still have to be swept. But at all other levels, there's going to be a great deal of uncertainty in the next couple of years as this new authority is established and populated. Does this suggest that perhaps we need to really rethink this because it's a completely different scenario and some of the things that were previously taken for granted will no longer be there? You maybe originally have recruited somebody on the basis they would spend a good portion of their career at this council. You know, for the next year, 2 or 3, we'll be recruited on the basis that it's very much a temporary assignment, and we need to be aware of the impact that will have on the council and on the delivery of its services.
I completely agree. It does actually change everything, but I think there's a couple of reasons why this becomes even more important. The first is because in the time between now and whenever local government reorganisation happens, we have to be delivering excellent customer services. We have to be delivering what the residents of this borough expect, and actually having a people strategy that supports our staff to do that's very important. I think from the other side of it, from our colleagues' perspective, I think part of the people strategy should now be preparing for a new unitary local authority. So how can we best support our staff to thrive in that context? And you're right, there are some services, in fact, a lot of the services that we deliver, I think will still be delivered, and I think we're lucky to have excellent colleagues in many of our services who will undoubtedly thrive in any new council structure that exists. But there should be a significant amount of consideration to actually how do we support staff through that process, how do we develop their skills, how do we perhaps broaden their horizons into different areas that they hadn't considered before. So absolutely agree. I think of all the issues that I mentioned at the start, the impact of local government reorganisation is going to be by far the most significant in the drafting of this now.
Well, if I can chuck in a few, I hope, helpful suggestions. I think engagement and communication is going to be absolutely vital to the success of this strategy, because nature abhors a vacuum, and having worked in environments where there's been takeovers, uncertainties, mergers and so on, people will fill in the gaps for themselves, quite often incorrectly, and we want to avoid the time-wasting element of trying to turn the ship around once these things start circulating. The last thing we want is people voting for the feet because they've no idea what's really going on.
And again, I don't disagree with any of that. I think the other factor that we have to think is that we are unfortunately bounded by some councils which have already gone through the unitary process. So, do they become a more appealing prospect for either our current staff or potential staff, given that we've still got that uncertainty to go through? So the absolute importance of getting that right in here is even more so for me.
Just following on from that, I would say that, it is a time of uncertainty, but there may also be opportunity. And I think that's the thing that we need to focus on, is what are the opportunities? We are saying that we want to them to feel that they're being rewarded for their performance and all the rest are being appreciated. I think overall it's how are we going to make that transition so they see it as opportunity, that this is they're going to get some reward at the end, or they can aim for some things, have ambition for something.
Unfortunately, I don't actually know the answer to how we do that, but I agree with you that it's absolutely vital that that's what we do. Absolutely, yeah. Agree completely.
And sorry, at the risk of special pleading here, it might be sensible to have a think about members, because one of the overall outcomes of the move to a unitary authority is there will be fewer councillors. So how are we going to handle that transition?
Well, given there's a fair amount of us that are twin atters, I'm not sure that's actually true. When you think about it, there may be less councillor positions, but whether that actually translates into less councillors, I'm not sure, because there are quite a lot of twin hatters between the districts and boroughs and county council. So that's that's an interesting thing. And of course, there will be we are turkeys voting for Christmas as councillors. Totally get that. But there will be opportunities perhaps for people to think about what they want to do and how they want to carry on in their lives. They may not wish to be a councillor any longer, but what we do want to do is to make the position of being a councillor, of serving your communities, attractive, and that in the new unitary council. So yeah, there is a job of work for existing members to make it attractive to people to want to come and serve their residents in the new council.
I was just going to say that I think there's a lot to be done in terms of a strategy just for councillors, because I think, first of all, I think many people don't actually know what councillors do. And I think, I mean, I've had this experience out there, and I think that it's quite important that we start to actually be more transparent about what we do and be able to communicate that. And there's so much more to go into that, but there you are. I just
Just to move that forward, thank you very much for all of your input, and we'll get together perhaps a group of us to go through the existing strategy and talk about what improvements or suggestions that we can make to the portfolio holder and cabinet on the strategy. And in due course it will obviously come back here anyway, so that you get a chance to have a look at it and look at the delivery plan, because I think that part of it is quite important. I think one thing that's come from this is that we all recognise how important the staff are to Rugby Borough Council. They're absolutely the bedrock, and we do need perhaps to do that celebration, and so perhaps not, the word is not reward, is it? It's recognition, and offering that recognition to them that their position and what they're doing and is very valuable to the council, but also their future is very valuable to the council, and that engagement will be quite key with the amount of change that is coming, and we need to prepare our staff for that, and I think this strategy has the capability of doing that. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for that presentation.
It's a pleasure.
It very, very much appreciated you coming along. And I know it was just unfortunate that Judith couldn't, and Councillor couldn't be here, but I think we've had a good discussion anyway. Okay. So if we circulate the dates for meetings, and can you come back as promptly as possible, and we'll get one put in the diary for you. But there'll be it's definitely going to be some interesting times for Scrutiny over the next year. Thank you very much for your attendance.